What if I told you that the most feared warship in galactic history wasn't built by an ancient warrior race, wasn't designed by a hive-mind collective with 1 billion years of experience, and wasn't even created by beings who could manipulate matter with their thoughts? What if I told you it was built by a species that still uses chemical propulsion, that figured out nuclear fusion barely 2 centuries ago, and that according to every galactic standard should have been conquered within weeks of making first contact? Welcome to the story of humanity's UENS Prometheus, the warship that changed everything we thought we knew about warfare, strategy, and survival in the cosmos. To understand why the Prometheus is so terrifying, you first need to understand the galaxy humanity entered. For the last 4,000 years, the galactic concordants had maintained what they called the perfect peace, a carefully balanced system where warfare was ritualized, predictable, and above all, civilized. When 2 species had a dispute, they would meet at designated conflict zones, deploy their standardized warships, and engage in what essentially amounted to a carefully choreographed dance of laser fire and shield exchanges. The concordants had rules, thousands of them. You couldn't target life support systems. You couldn't attack ships that had surrendered. You couldn't use kinetic weapons above a certain velocity. You couldn't employ biological warfare. You couldn't hack enemy ship systems. The list went on and on, built up over millennia of conflicts that had been sanitized, regulated, and transformed into something more like a sport than actual war. The dominant powers, the Crystal Angel, the gaseous Vorix Collective, and the silicon-based Karth Empire, had perfected this system. Their warships were marvels of technology, to be sure. Shields that could deflect energy weapons with 98% efficiency. Laser batteries that could fire for hours without overheating. Faster-than-light drives that put humanity's best efforts to shame. But here's the thing, they were all variations on the same theme. Every ship followed the same basic design philosophy, used the same tactics, played by the same rules. When humanity made first contact in 2147, the concordants assessed us immediately. They sent their standard evaluation fleet, 3 light cruisers, standard configuration, to our solar system, not to conquer us, mind you, but to evaluate our threat level and determine our place in the galactic hierarchy. Captain Sarah Chen of the UENS Discovery welcomed them with open arms. We were so excited, so naive, so hopeful. The evaluation took 6 months. The concordance observers watched our military exercises, examined our technology, studied our tactical databases. Then they delivered their verdict. Humanity ranked 847th out of 850 to known spacefaring species in military capability. We were classified as negligible threat, suitable for protectorate status, which was diplomatic speak. For these primitives need to be protected from themselves. The report was damning. Our weapons were crude energy projectiles that couldn't even penetrate standard shielding. Our armor was laughably thin. Our tactics were unnecessarily aggressive and lacking in proper decorum. We were told that if we wanted to join the concordants, we would need to decommission 90% of our military, accept their protection, and most importantly, never under any circumstances build warships that didn't conform to their standards. Earth's response was, let's call it mixed. Half the planetary government wanted to accept immediately. Why wouldn't we? We were being offered technology that was centuries beyond our own, guaranteed protection, and a place in a galactic community. But the other half, led by Fleet Admiral Marcus Rodriguez, had a different perspective. He stood before the World Congress and said something that would echo through history. They're not offering us protection. They're offering us a leash. The debate raged for 3 years. In that time, something interesting happened. Humanity started noticing patterns in the concordance data they'd been given. Combat records from the past 1,000 years showed that warfare had become almost entirely predictable. Ship losses in any given conflict averaged between 15 and 20% per side. Battles lasted an average of 4 to 6 hours. Casualty rates had been declining for centuries. At first, this looked like progress. Civilization had evolved beyond the brutality of total war. But then Lieutenant Commander Jessica Park, a tactical analyst for the UENS Navy, published a paper that changed everything. She titled it The Concordance Trap, how galactic peace became galactic stagnation. Her thesis was simple but profound. The Concordants hadn't eliminated war, they'd domesticated it. And in doing so, they'd created a system so rigid, so predictable, that it had become vulnerable to anyone willing to think differently. Park's analysis showed that every Concordant species approached warfare the same way. They optimized for shield strength and energy weapons. They designed ships to be durable, to withstand long engagements. They valued honor and adherence to rules over tactical flexibility. They had forgotten or perhaps never learned that the purpose of war isn't to follow rules. It's to win. The paper sparked fierce controversy. The Concordants dismissed it as the naive theorizing of a primitive species that didn't understand advanced warfare. But Admiral Rodriguez saw something else. He saw an opportunity. And more importantly, he saw a warning. If humanity simply adopted Concordance technology and tactics, we would forever be at the bottom of the galactic hierarchy, dependent on the mercy of species that saw us as little more than clever pets. In 2153, despite furious protests from the pro-Concordance faction, Earth authorized Project Prometheus. The mission statement was simple: design a warship that could defeat any vessel in the Concordance fleet, using only human technology and human tactical philosophy. The budget was astronomical, roughly 3% of the entire global economy. The timeline was aggressive, 5 years to launch, and the secrecy was absolute. The Concordants couldn't know what we were building until it was too late to stop us. Admiral Rodriguez handpicked the team, engineers who'd been rejected from the Concordance Technology Exchange Program for being too innovative, tacticians who'd been criticized for aggressive thinking, scientists who questioned whether the Concordance way was really the only way. And at the head of the project, he placed Captain Elena Vasquez, a woman who'd been court-martialed twice for excessive tactical creativity during training exercises, charges that were quietly dropped when she won those exercises despite being outnumbered 3-1. The Prometheus design went through 47 iterations. Early concepts tried to simply improve on Concordance designs: better shields, stronger lasers, faster engines, but Captain Vasquez kept rejecting them. "We're thinking like them," she said during one heated design review. "We need to think like us, like humans. What do humans do better than anyone else in the galaxy?" That question stumped the team for weeks. Humanity was behind in almost every measurable way. Our computers were slower, our materials weaker, our understanding of exotic physics limited. But then Dr. James Okonkwo, the project's chief strategist, said something that reframed everything. "We lose. That's what we do better than anyone. We've lost more wars, faced more extinction events, survived more disasters than any species in the Concordance can imagine. And we're still here. Maybe the question isn't what we do better. Maybe it's what we're willing to do that they're not." That insight became the foundation of everything. The Concordance had optimized for long engagements with predictable outcomes. So Prometheus would be designed for the exact opposite: short, brutal encounters with overwhelming force. The Concordance valued ship preservation and minimal casualties. Prometheus would be designed to be operated by a skeleton crew with heavy automation, making it expendable if necessary. The Concordance relied on energy shields and energy weapons. Prometheus would use kinetic weapons that shields weren't designed to stop. The ship that emerged from Project Prometheus looked nothing like a Concordance vessel, where their ships were elegant, with sweeping curves and aesthetic symmetry. Prometheus was a brutal wedge of armor and weapons, where they prioritized interior space and crew comfort. Prometheus was cramped and utilitarian, where they mounted external weapons batteries. Prometheus had internal silos hidden behind armor plating. The weapons loadout was where human creativity truly shone. The Concordance had banned kinetic weapons above certain velocities because they were uncivilized. So Prometheus was equipped with railguns that could fire tungsten slugs at 4% the speed of light, fast enough that no shield in the Concordance had been designed to stop them. The kinetic energy of a single slug was equivalent to a small nuclear weapon, and Prometheus carried magazines with thousands of rounds. But that was just the beginning. The Concordance had banned cyber warfare as dishonorable. So Prometheus had an entire deck dedicated to electronic warfare systems designed to infiltrate and disrupt enemy computers. They'd banned biological weapons, so Prometheus carried nanite swarms that could eat through ship hulls, technically not biological, but just as effective. They'd banned attacking life support, so Prometheus had sonic weapons that could incapacitate crews without damaging their ship, which technically wasn't targeting life support, just the people who operated it. The engineering team got creative in other ways too. Concordance shields were optimized to stop high-energy laser attacks, so they required enormous power cores that generated massive heat signatures. Prometheus used a fraction of that power, running cold enough to be nearly invisible to standard sensors. Concordance ships broadcast their positions constantly. It was considered proper protocol. Prometheus could go completely dark, drifting through space like a ghost. And then there was the AI. The Concordance prohibited advanced artificial intelligence, fearing that giving machines too much autonomy was dangerous. Human ships were limited to simple navigation and targeting computers. But Prometheus had ARI, adaptive response and intelligence, Ray, an AI system that could process battlefield data thousands of times faster than any organic crew and make tactical decisions in microseconds. Was it illegal by Concordance standards? Absolutely. Did humanity care? Not even a little bit. The power plant was another marvel of human engineering, or perhaps human recklessness, depending on your perspective. Concordance ships used clean, efficient antimatter reactors with multiple redundant safety systems. They could run for years without refueling and had a failure rate of essentially zero. Prometheus used a controlled matter-antimatter annihilation chamber with exactly one safety system, ARIA's constant monitoring. It produced 3 times the power of a comparable Concordance reactor in 1/3 the space. But if containment failed for even a microsecond, the ship would vaporize. The chief engineer's response to concerns about this: if containment fails, we've got bigger problems than the reactor. The Prometheus launched in 2158, 5 months ahead of schedule. Captain Vasquez took her crew of just 87 people compared to the 1,000-plus crew on a comparable Concordance vessel and began the shakedown cruise. For 6 months, they tested every system, pushed every component to its limits, and refined their tactics. ARIA learned and adapted, becoming more efficient with each simulation. During this time, the Concordance got wind that humanity was building something. They sent Ambassador Kelrix, a Shell diplomat known for his patience with young species, to remind Earth of the importance of following proper protocols. His visit to the Prometheus construction facility was captured on video. That later became famous across human space. "This vessel is concerning," Kelrix said, his crystalline form flickering with what humans had learned to recognize as disapproval. "These weapons systems are not standard. This armor configuration is unnecessarily aggressive, and these tactical computers appear to exceed the permitted automation levels." Captain Vasquez gave him a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ambassador, we've reviewed the Concordance regulations. We're a protectorate member, not a full member. The restrictions on military technology don't apply to us until we achieve full membership status." "A technicality," Kelrix countered. "A fact," Vasquez replied. "We're simply ensuring we can defend ourselves adequately. Surely the Concordance wouldn't want us to be helpless." The conversation continued in that vein for an hour, with Kelrix growing increasingly agitated and Vasquez remaining calm and legally precise. Finally, the ambassador delivered what he clearly thought was a decisive argument. "Captain, you must understand. The Concordance way of warfare has kept the peace for 4,000 years. What you're building here threatens that peace. Your weapons, your tactics, they're reminiscent of the Savage Age, before we learned to civilize conflict. If you deploy this vessel, there will be consequences." Vasquez's response became legendary. "Ambassador, humanity has a saying: if you want peace, prepare for war. We tried preparing for peace. We ranked 847th out of 852 species. We were told we needed your protection because we couldn't protect ourselves. Well, now we're preparing for war. Let's see how that works out." Kelrix left Earth in a fury, and the Concordance High Council convened an emergency session. They debated for weeks about what to do about the human problem. Some wanted to immediately revoke Earth's protectorate status and blockade the solar system. Others argued that humans were overestimating their new toy and would learn their place soon enough. Eventually, they settled on a middle course. They would allow Prometheus to launch, but they would arrange for the ship to face a real combat situation against a proper concordance vessel. Once humanity saw how outclassed they truly were, they'd abandon this foolish independence and accept their proper place in the galactic order. The opportunity came sooner than expected. In the Tanis system, a minor border dispute had flared up between the Vrox Collective and the Karth Empire. Both sides had deployed ships, and tensions were escalating toward one of the Concordance's ritualized conflicts. The High Council sent a message to Earth. If humanity wanted to prove the worth of their new warship, they were welcome to send Prometheus as an observer. It would be educational for the primitive humans to see how advanced species conducted warfare. Admiral Rodriguez saw the trap immediately. They were going to put Prometheus in a situation where it would be clearly outclassed, humiliating humanity on a galactic stage. But he also saw the opportunity. They're giving us a chance to show what we can do, he told Captain Vasquez. They think it's a lesson. Let's make sure it is just not the lesson they're expecting. Prometheus arrived in the Tanis system on November 3rd, 258. The battle was already in progress, if you could call it that. 3 Vrox cruisers and 3 Karth dreadnoughts were exchanging fire at a distance of approximately 10,000 kilometers. Their shields flickered and flashed as laser beams intersected in a dazzling light show. Occasionally, a shot would penetrate a weakened shield and score a hit on armor, but the damage was minimal. Both sides were performing exactly as the centuries-old tactical doctrines predicted they would. Also present were observer ships from a dozen other Concordance species, including the Jal flagship Eternal Radiance with Ambassador Kelrix aboard. Everyone was curious to see humanity's new warship. When Prometheus dropped out of FTL at the edge of the system, the reaction was immediate and unanimous. Confusion. Is that their warship? The Vrox commander transmitted to Kelrix. It appears to be a cargo hauler with armor plating. I believe that is indeed the Prometheus. Kelrix confirmed. Humans have unconventional aesthetic sensibilities. What they couldn't see was Arya absorbing every piece of data from the ongoing engagement, analyzing shield frequencies, weapon yields, tactical patterns, communication protocols, and 1,000 other variables. Within 3 minutes, the AI had developed a complete tactical picture and had identified 17 critical vulnerabilities in standard Concordance combat doctrine. Captain Vasquez studied Arya's analysis on her command display. Well, she said quietly to her bridge crew, we came here to make an impression. Let's make it memorable. But before Prometheus could do anything, the situation changed. A new contact appeared on sensors, a small civilian transport, off course and damaged, drifting directly into the combat zone. It was a human ship, the cargo vessel Unity, carrying a crew of 12 and a hold full of medical supplies. For a colony world, all ships, this is the transport Unity, came a panicked voice. Our engines are damaged. We can't maneuver. We're drifting into the combat zone. Please, we need assistance. Both the Vrox and Karth forces immediately ceased fire. Concordance protocols were clear. Combat would be suspended until the civilian vessel could be evacuated. The Eternal Radiance dispatched a shuttle to assist. Everything was proceeding exactly as the rules dictated. Crisis averted, no harm done. Combat would resume shortly. Except then the pirate fleet arrived. The Ravagers, as they called themselves, were one of the few groups in the galaxy who didn't follow Concordance rules, operating from hidden bases in uncharted space. They'd learned to exploit the Concordance's predictable nature. They'd heard about the high-profile demonstration happening in the Tanis system and saw an opportunity too good to pass up. Multiple warships with their guards down, focused on a rescue operation, following protocols that made them sitting ducks. 8 Ravager ships dropped out of FTL in a coordinated strike. They weren't using standard Concordance technology. Their ships were cobbled together from stolen tech, black market weapons, and complete disregard for safety regulations. They weren't elegant or efficient, but they were dangerous precisely because they didn't follow the rules. The lead Ravager ship immediately opened fire on the Unity. shredding the civilian transport with weapons that ignored the ceasefire protocols. All 12 crew members died in seconds. Then the Ravagers turned their attention to the observer ships, targeting the ones with the weakest shields and most valuable cargo. For a moment, the Concordance forces were paralyzed. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. Pirates were supposed to run from military vessels, not attack them. There were rules about this, protocols. The Vorks and Karth commanders were both trying to access their tactical databases to find the appropriate response when Captain Vasquez made a decision that took point for seconds. Arya. Full combat protocol. Target designation, all Ravager vessels. Authorization Vasquez Alpha 1. Ladies and gentlemen, let's show them what humans do to pirates. The question was, would the galaxy's most dangerous warship be enough? When we left off, Captain Elena Vasquez had just learned a terrifying truth. The Concordance hadn't tried to stop humanity from building the Prometheus they'd been manipulating us toward it all along. 4,000 years ago, something called the Void Dwellers had threatened the entire galaxy, forcing the Concordance to create their system of ritualized, predictable warfare, not to keep peace between species, but to hide their military capabilities from something watching from the darkness. And now that something was coming back, what happened next would be analyzed and debated for decades. Prometheus disappeared from sensors as its stealth systems engaged. The Ravagers, confident in their surprise attack, never saw the human warship go dark. They were too focused on the easy prey in front of them. The first Ravager ship died without ever knowing what killed it. A railgun slug traveling at 4% light speed punched through its shields, which weren't designed to stop solid projectiles, tore through the ship lengthwise, and exited the other side. The kinetic impact was so massive that the ship didn't explode. It simply came apart, breaking into tumbling pieces of wreckage. The second Ravager ship detected the threat and tried to turn, but Arya had already calculated its evasive options. 3 railgun slugs bracketed its predicted positions. The ship dodged 2 of them and was obliterated by the third. Now the Ravagers knew they were under attack, but they couldn't see their attacker. Prometheus was running completely cold, using only passive sensors, making micro-adjustments to its position that kept it invisible. The pirates spread out, trying to locate the threat. It was exactly the wrong tactic. The third and fourth Ravager ships died simultaneously when Prometheus fired a spread of missiles. Not energy weapons that shields could deflect, but old-fashioned chemical rockets with tungsten penetrator warheads. The Ravager shields never even activated. They weren't calibrated to detect such primitive weapons. Both ships were crippled, drifting wrecks in less than 10 seconds. The fifth Ravager ship tried to run, engaging its FTL drive, but Arya had infiltrated its navigation computer during the first seconds of engagement that dishonorable cyber warfare the Concordance had banned. The ship's FTL coordinates were altered by 0.003%. It jumped away successfully and emerged 3 seconds later inside the gravity well of Tanis 4, where its drive tore itself apart. The 6th and 7th Ravager ships tried a different approach. They turned toward the Concordance, observer vessels, and opened fire, clearly hoping that the human warship wouldn't risk collateral damage. They had fundamentally misunderstood who they were dealing with. Arya's targeting systems were far more precise than anything in the Concordance fleet. Prometheus fired a sustained railgun barrage that threaded between 3 observer ships, missed the Eternal Radiance by less than 50 meters, and struck both Ravager vessels in their reactor sections. The explosions were spectacular and deadly, and not a single shot came within 100 meters of any friendly vessel. The 8th and final Ravager ship did the only smart thing. It broadcast a surrender on all channels and powered down its weapons. Captain Vasquez could have accepted it. According to Concordance protocols, she should have accepted it. But then she remembered the Unity, its crew murdered in cold blood. And she remembered that humanity had never signed onto those protocols. Arya, disable their engines and life support. Leave them alive long enough for a Concordance ship to pick them up. If they want mercy, they can beg for it from someone who follows their rules. The Prometheus emerged from stealth, its hull still showing 0 battle damage, its weapons still at 97% capacity. 8 Ravager ships had attacked, 8 Ravager ships were now destroyed or disabled. Total engagement time, 4 minutes and 37 seconds. For comparison, a typical Concordance engagement against pirates took several hours and usually ended with the pirates escaping when their shields got low. The communications channels erupted. Every ship in the system was trying to hail Prometheus. The Vrork's commander wanted to know what weapons humanity had used. The Karth admiral was demanding tactical data. Ambassador Kelrix was insisting that Captain Vasquez's answer for violating multiple Concordance regulations regarding acceptable weapons, targeting protocols, and rules of engagement. Captain Vasquez opened a channel to all ships. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the UENS Prometheus to all vessels. We have neutralized the pirate threat. The battle space is secure. Any ship requiring assistance should signal now. Captain Vasquez. Kelrix's voice was strained. His usual diplomatic composure shattered. You must explain these actions. The weapons you used, the tactics you employed, they violate numerous Concordance. Ambassador. Vasquez interrupted, and her voice was cold as interstellar space. 12 humans just died on that transport ship. 12 civilians murdered in cold blood while your vessels sat here debating protocols. My crew and I responded to a clear and present threat using the tools at our disposal. If you have a problem with that, I suggest you file a formal complaint with Earth. We'll be sure to give it all the consideration it deserves. Before Kelrix could respond, another voice broke in the Vrork's commander. Human vessel. That was the most efficient combat action I have witnessed in 70 years of service. Your tactical systems, your weapons, your crew, they are beyond impressive. They are terrifying. I believe I now understand why your Admiral Rodriguez named your ship Prometheus. Like the Titan who stole fire from the gods, you have stolen something from us, our certainty that we understood warfare. In the following hours, as Prometheus stood guard over the recovery operations for the Unity's crew remains, the galaxy began to process what had just happened. Combat footage from observer ships spread across the Concordance network. Military analysts studied every frame, trying to understand what they'd witnessed. Political leaders convened emergency sessions. The Concordance High Council met in closed session for 17 hours. The debate was fierce. Some members wanted to immediately declare humanity a threat and quarantine the Sol system. Others argued that humans had just demonstrated exactly why the Concordance needed them. They could do what no other species could. Think outside the very rules that had protected, but also limited everyone else. Meanwhile, in a secure facility on Earth, Admiral Rodriguez was receiving a classified intelligence report that made his blood run cold. The report contained information that changed everything they thought they knew about the Prometheus, the Concordance, and the real reason the galaxy's elder species had been so desperate to keep humanity weak. Rodriguez read the report 3 times, his hands shaking slightly by the 3rd pass. Then he encrypted it with the highest level security codes and sent it directly to Captain Vasquez. With a message, the demonstration was a success. But we've just learned why they're really afraid of us. You need to see this now. Everything we thought we understood about the Concordance was wrong. As Vasquez received the message and began reading the classified file, her face went pale. The document contained intercepted communications from 6 months before Prometheus launched, before humans even knew about Project Prometheus. Communications between the highest levels of Concordance leadership. They had always known humanity would build something like Prometheus. In fact, they'd been counting on it. But why? Why would they want humans to develop a weapon that could challenge their supremacy? The answer was in the final paragraph of the report, and it made Vasquez's blood run cold. Translation confirmed. The humans will build the weapons we cannot. When the Void Dwellers return, we will need warriors who don't follow our rules. Pray they are ready in time. The Void Dwellers, a name that appeared in the oldest Concordance records, then disappeared for 1,000 years ago, right when the Concordance had established its perfect peace. A name that was now classified at the highest possible level, and according to deep space monitoring stations, something matching their signature had just been detected at the edge of known space, heading toward inhabited systems. The Prometheus wasn't humanity's declaration of independence from the Concordance. It was their answer to a threat they didn't even know existed. And judging by the encrypted follow-up message from Admiral Rodriguez, that threat was about to make itself very, very known. "Captain," her tactical officer said, breaking her from her thoughts, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth. Fleet Command is recalling us. They're calling up every human warship. Something's happening in Sector 447. Captain Vasquez looked at her crew, then at the tactical display showing the peaceful Concordance space around them. Somewhere out there, in the dark between stars, something was coming. Something that had made the mighty Concordance so afraid that they'd manipulated humanity into becoming warriors. What about their weapons? Unknown. They haven't powered up any obvious weapon systems. However, I'm detecting massive energy buildups in multiple sections of each ship. These could be power cores, weapon capacitors, or something else entirely." The Concordance ships were hanging back, clearly nervous. The Vrork's destroyer captain transmitted, "Prometheus, this is Crystal Wind. Our tactical computers cannot establish firing solutions. These vessels don't match any known profile." The emergency recall brought Prometheus back to Earth in record time. Captain Vasquez found herself in a secure briefing room deep beneath UEN's Fleet Command, surrounded by Admiral Rodriguez, the Joint Chiefs, and surprisingly 3 holographic projections of Concordance High Council members, including Ambassador Kelrix. "Captain Vasquez," Kelrix began, his crystalline form flickering with what humans had learned to recognize as deep anxiety. "I must begin with an apology. We have not been honest with your species. In fact, we have not been honest with most species in the Concordance. What I am about to tell you is known only to the eldest races, and has been kept secret for millennia." Admiral Rodriguez gestured to a tactical display. "Captain, what you're about to hear is going to sound like science fiction, even by our standards. But every word is verified." The display activated, showing a star map of the galaxy. Kelrix continued, "For 1,300 years ago, the galaxy was very different. There was no Concordance. Instead, there were dozens of major powers, each with advanced militaries, each competing for resources and territory. Warfare was brutal, sophisticated, and constant. Ships were weapons of mass destruction. Planets were bombarded. Entire species were rendered extinct. A new image appeared, a vessel unlike anything Vasquez had seen. It was enormous, easily 10 times the size of the largest Concordance dreadnought, and its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Then they came," Kelrix said quietly. "We don't know from where. We don't know why. We call them the Void Dwellers because they seem to emerge from the space between spaces, the quantum foam beneath reality itself. They didn't communicate. They didn't negotiate. They simply began systematically destroying every military installation, every warship, every weapons platform they encountered." The display showed archival footage, grainy and ancient, but unmistakable. Void Dweller ships tearing through defensive fleets like they were made of paper. Weapons that seemed to ignore shields entirely. Tactics that suggested they could predict their enemies' movements before they made them. 17 major civilizations fell in the first year, Kelrix continued. "Not conquered, destroyed. They didn't want our territory or our resources. They wanted us defenseless. The remaining species formed an emergency coalition, pooling all our technology and knowledge. We fought them for 73 years. Did you win?" Vasquez asked, though she already knew the answer. "No," Kelrix admitted. "We lost, badly. For every Void Dweller ship we destroyed, and we did destroy some, they eliminated hundreds of ours. Our combined fleets were reduced to 15% of their original strength. We were facing extinction. So what happened?" Vasquez leaned forward. "Obviously, we're all still here." A new Concordance representative spoke, a Carthelder whose silicon-based form looked ancient and weathered. "They stopped. On the 73rd year, 3rd month, 12th day of the war. Every Void Dweller ship simultaneously withdrew to the edge of the galaxy and vanished. We never understood why." "But you did understand something," Admiral Rodriguez interjected. "Tell her." Kelrix's form flickered rapidly, the crystalline equivalent of nervous agitation. "We analyzed every engagement, every tactical decision, every pattern we could find, and we discovered something that terrified us more than the Void Dwellers themselves. They weren't trying to exterminate us. They were teaching us, teaching you what Vasquez asked. Not to be a threat, Kelrix replied. Every target they chose, every weapon they prioritized destroying, they were systematically eliminating our capacity. For certain types of warfare, they destroyed ships with advanced AI systems. They obliterated facilities that researched certain types of weapons. They specifically targeted commanders who showed particular tactical creativity. It was like they were pruning a tree, cutting away branches they didn't want to grow. The implications hit Vasquez like a physical blow. You created the Concordance system to hide. You banned AI, kinetic weapons, cyber warfare, all the things they'd specifically targeted. You made warfare predictable and ritualized so they'd think you were no longer a threat. Precisely. The Karth Elder confirmed. For 4,000 years, we have maintained the facade of a civilized, peaceful galaxy. We told ourselves and our descendants that we had evolved beyond brutal warfare. But the truth is, we were hiding, showing only our weakest capabilities, hoping that if the Void Dwellers ever returned, they would see we were no longer dangerous and leave us alone. Admiral Rodriguez pulled up another display, this one showing recent deep space sensor data. 3 months ago, Concordance monitoring stations detected quantum signatures matching Void Dweller technology. They're back, and they're heading toward inhabited space. The Concordance High Council has been in complete panic. But then you appeared, Kelrix said, looking directly at Vasquez. Humanity, a species that never experienced the Void Dwellers, that never learned to fear them. A species that, when told to be weak, chose to be strong. When we saw your early military assessments, we realized you thought like we used to think. Before we learned to be afraid, you manipulated us, Vasquez said, her voice cold. The evaluation that ranked us 847th, the Protectorate status. The restrictions, it was all designed to make us angry enough to build something like Prometheus. Yes, Kelrix admitted. We are deeply ashamed of this deception. But we were desperate. The elder species cannot build weapons like yours. Our entire cultures have been shaped by 4,000 years of conditioning against that type of thinking. But humanity, you haven't been conditioned. You still remember how to wage real war. Captain Vasquez stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. So let me get this straight. You've spent 4,000 years playing pretend, letting your military capabilities atrophy. And now that the real threat is back, you want us to fight them for you. Not for us, the Karth Elder said. With us. The Concordance still has vast resources, advanced technology, and numerical superiority. What we lack is tactical creativity and the will to use our full capabilities. Humanity can provide that. Together, we might survive. And if we refuse? Vasquez asked. Admiral Rodriguez answered. Then the Void Dwellers will do what they did before systematically. Destroy every military asset in the galaxy. Starting with the most dangerous one, Prometheus. The strategy session lasted 18 hours. By the end, humanity had negotiated an agreement. We would help the Concordance face the Void Dwellers. But in exchange, every restriction on human military development would be permanently lifted. More importantly, human tactical doctrine would guide the combined defense. The Concordance would have to learn to fight like humans, aggressive, unpredictable, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. Captain Vasquez was given command of a task force, something that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. Prometheus would be the flagship, supported by 3 Concordance heavy cruisers, 2 Vrork's destroyers, and a Karth dreadnought. It wasn't a large force, but it would be the test case for whether the Concordance species could adapt to human style. Warfare. The Void Dwellers had been detected in Sector 447, apparently investigating the site of an old battle from the ancient war. Long-range scans showed 3 vessels, each matching the profile of the ships from the historical records. Command's orders were clear: engage, assess capabilities, and survive long enough to report back. As Prometheus and its escorts jumped into Sector 447, Vasquez addressed her expanded fleet. All ships, this is Prometheus Actual. I know this isn't how any of you were trained to fight. The tactics we'll be using will feel wrong, dangerous, maybe even dishonorable. But understand this, we're not fighting for glory or following rules. We're fighting to survive. Every ship in this task force has permission to use any weapon, any tactic, anything that gives us an advantage. There are no rules anymore. Prometheus out. They emerged from FTL at the edge of the sector. The Void Dweller ships were immediately visible on sensors, 3 massive vessels, hovering near an ancient debris field. They were even larger than the historical records had suggested, each one easily 5 kilometers long. Their hulls that strange light-absorbing black that made them look like tears in space itself. Arya, Vasquez said quietly, full tactical analysis. Find me their weaknesses. Analyzing, the AI responded. Captain, I'm detecting highly unusual quantum signatures. These vessels appear to phase in and out of normal space at irregular intervals. Conventional targeting solutions will be extremely difficult. Their hull composition is unlike any known material. It's absorbing active sensor pulses, which suggests stealth capabilities far beyond our own. Crystal Wind, Prometheus, Vasquez replied. Stay in formation. Nobody fires until I give the word. Arya, try opening a communication channel to the Void Dwellers. Let's see if they'll talk to us. Channel open, Captain. Vasquez took a breath. Void Dweller vessels. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Naval Ship Prometheus. We are here representing both humanity and the Galactic Concordance. Please respond. For 30 seconds, there was nothing. Then, suddenly, every screen on every ship in the task force flickered and displayed the same image, a symbol that looked like 3 interlocking spirals rotating slowly. And then a voice, if it could be called a voice. It sounded like it was coming from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. A sound that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the mind. Humanity, unexpected. Parameters require reassessment. Vasquez fought down a wave of nausea. The voice was disorienting on a fundamental level. You know about humanity? All species cataloged. Humanity emerged after previous intervention. New variable. Probability matrix is incomplete. Intervention? Vasquez glanced at her tactical officer, who looked equally confused. You mean your war with the Concordance 4,000 years ago? Not war. Correction. Threat assessment and limitation of dangerous development vectors. Admiral Rodriguez had been right. The Void Dwellers hadn't been trying to conquer anyone. They'd been pruning the galaxy's military capabilities like a gardener trimming dangerous branches. Why? Vasquez asked. Why limit our development? Patterns detected. Species follow predictable technological progression. Stage 7. Artificial intelligence singularity. Stage 8. Self-replicating weapons. Stage 9. Reality manipulation capability. Stages 8 and 9. Produce universal extinction level. Threats, intervention necessary to prevent galactic sterilization. The pieces clicked together in Vasquez's mind with horrifying clarity. The Void Dwellers weren't conquerors or destroyers. They were gardeners or maybe prison wardens. They kept the galaxy's species from developing technologies that could threaten existence itself. But you left, Vasquez said. 4,000 years ago, you stopped and withdrew. Why? Concordance species demonstrated acceptable modification to development vectors. Probability of dangerous. Emergence reduced to acceptable thresholds. Monitoring continued from distance. And now you're back because of us, Vasquez said quietly. Because humanity developed something you consider dangerous. Prometheus designation, potential stage 8 precursor, artificial intelligence system area. Potential stage 7 precursor. Combined system shows 73%. Probability of dangerous development vector within 3 generations. Vasquez felt her blood run cold. The Void Dwellers weren't here to conquer. They were here to do to humanity what they'd done to the Concordance, prune away our most dangerous capabilities. Before we could threaten the galaxy. Captain, her tactical officer whispered urgently. They're powering weapons. All 3 Void Dweller ships suddenly lit up on sensors. Energy readings spiked 2 levels that made their power cores look like miniature stars. And those strange quantum signatures intensified. The ships were beginning to phase in and out of reality at increasing frequencies. Prometheus, designated for immediate neutralization. Arya, system designated for immediate neutralization. Human military infrastructure, designated for systematic limitation. Compliance is not required. Resistance is expected and calculated. All ships, Vasquez said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. Battle stations, Prepare for immediate combat. Arya, give me firing solutions on all 3 targets. Captain, Arya responded. And for the first time, the AI's voice carried something that almost sounded like concern. I must inform you that based on historical data and current sensor readings, our probability of survival is less than 8%. I didn't ask for odds. Arya, I asked for firing solutions. Understood. Calculating. Captain, their phasing makes conventional targeting impossible, but I've detected a pattern. They exist in normal space for 0.47 seconds during each cycle. If we time our weapons precisely, do it. All ships load kinetic penetrators. When I give the command, fire everything at target designated. Alpha, we're going to show these gardeners what happens when they try to prune humanity. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries, assuming humanity survived to have military academies. The Void Dwellers attacked first, and their weapons were like nothing in any database. Beams of what looked like solidified darkness lanced out from the lead ship, targeting Prometheus. But they weren't energy weapons or particle beams. They were something else entirely, weapons that seemed to erase matter from existence, rather than destroy it. Evasive. Vasquez shouted, and Prometheus rolled hard to starboard. The beam passed through the space they'd occupied a second before, and where it touched a piece of debris from the ancient battlefield, the debris simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no energy release, it was just gone. All ships, scatter formation. Crystal Wind, come about bearing to 170, Karth Vengeance. Target Void Dweller Delta with your main batteries. Arya, I need that firing solution now. Pattern locked, Captain. Void Dweller Alpha will be in phase in 3, 2, 1. Now, fire. Prometheus unleashed a railgun barrage, 20 tungsten slugs traveling at 4% light speed, all aimed at a single point on the Void Dweller's hull. 18 missed as the target phased out of normal space, but 2 struck home during that brief moment of solidity. The kinetic impact was enormous. Each slug carried energy equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. The Void Dweller's hull absorbed the first impact with barely a ripple, but the second slug hit the exact same spot, and this time, something changed. A crack appeared in that light-absorbing surface, and for just a moment, brilliant energy leaked out before the ship's systems compensated. They can be hurt. Vasquez shouted. Arya, analysis. Their hulls are incredibly resilient, but not invulnerable. The phasing ability appears to be both defensive and offensive. They're shifting between dimensions to avoid attacks and to make their weapons more effective. However, the phasing is not instantaneous. There's a vulnerability window of approximately 0.4 seconds. Then we hit them during that window. All ships, coordinate fire on my mark. Target the same spot on Void Dweller Alpha. We're going to crack it open. But the Void Dwellers were adapting too. The second ship suddenly accelerated to speeds that should have been impossible without an FTL drive, closing the distance to the Concordant's dreadnought Karth Vengeance in seconds. Its weapons tore into the dreadnought's shields, and unlike Concordant's energy weapons that would gradually wear down the shields, these reality-erasing beams simply punched straight through. Karth Vengeance is taking critical damage, the tactical officer reported. They're evacuating sections 7 through 12. Hull breaches on multiple decks. The Karth captain's voice came through, strained but determined. Prometheus, this is Vengeance. We cannot survive sustained fire from this enemy. Requesting permission to execute human tactical doctrine designation Last Stand. Vasquez felt her chest tighten. Last Stand was a tactic she'd included in the briefing materials, a maneuver where a critically damaged ship would deliberately ram an enemy vessel, using its remaining power to maximize impact damage. It was the kind of tactic the Concordants would have never considered before. Vengeance. Prometheus. Permission granted. Make it count. The massive Karth dreadnought, already heavily damaged, suddenly diverted all power from its shields and weapons to its engines. It accelerated directly at the second Void Dweller ship, which seemed almost confused by the maneuver. The Void Dweller fired again, tearing huge chunks out of Vengeance's hull. But the dreadnought kept coming. At the last second, the Karth captain transmitted one final message for the Concordants, for humanity, for the future. The impact was catastrophic. The dreadnought struck the Void Dweller ship at nearly one-third light speed, its remaining antimatter reactor detonating on contact. The explosion was visible across half the sector, a miniature sun burning for 3 full seconds. When the glare faded, both ships were gone. The Void Dweller hadn't been destroyed. Scans showed it had phased away at the last possible instant, but it had taken massive damage and was withdrawing toward the edge of the sector. One down. Two to go, Vasquez said grimly. Arya, what did we learn? Analysis. The Void Dwellers can be damaged by sufficient kinetic force. Their phasing ability has limitations. They cannot phase while firing their primary weapons, and they cannot maintain phase shift indefinitely. I'm detecting energy fluctuations that suggest they need to return to normal space to recharge their phasing systems. Can you predict when they'll need to recharge? Working on it, Captain. I need more data. The battle continued for another 7 minutes, an eternity in space combat. The Vrork's destroyer Crystal Wind was caught by a reality-erasing beam and lost its entire aft section, including engines. The crew evacuated to life pods while the ship drifted helplessly. One of the Concordance cruisers took a glancing hit and had to withdraw. Its hull partially phased into another dimension in a way that made it structurally unstable. But the human Concordance task force was learning, adapting, doing what no military force had successfully done in 4,000 years. They were hurting the Void Dwellers. Arya's predictions grew more accurate with each engagement. The remaining ships coordinated their fire, hitting the Void Dweller vessels during their vulnerable moments. And then Vasquez saw the opportunity. The third Void Dweller ship, which had been hanging back, suddenly showed a massive energy spike. Arya's analysis came instantly. Captain, that vessel is preparing to open some kind of dimensional portal. I believe it's calling for reinforcements. Not happening. All remaining ships, concentrate all fire on target Charlie. Arya, I need every weapon we have ready to fire the instant that ship solidifies. Captain, if we use our full arsenal, we'll be depleted. If this doesn't work, it'll work. Because it has to. The Void Dweller ship phased into normal space, its portal nearly complete. And in that moment, Prometheus and its escorts fired everything. Railgun slugs, missiles, laser batteries, particle beams, even the experimental nanite warheads that humanity had developed but never tested. All of it converged on a single point, the Void Dweller's hull, already weakened from previous impacts, cracked, then shattered. The dimensional portal, partially opened, collapsed catastrophically. The ship seemed to fold in on itself, caught between dimensions, and then it simply imploded with a flash of exotic energy that temporarily blinded every sensor in the sector. When the sensors cleared, only one Void Dweller ship remained, the first one, the one they designated Alpha. It hung in space, seemingly assessing the situation. Its two companions were gone, one damaged and withdrawn, one destroyed. The human Concordance force was battered, but still combat capable. And then the voice spoke again. Reassessment complete. Humanity shows unexpected capability. Parameters require fundamental revision. Vasquez, exhausted and running on pure adrenaline, responded, You came here to limit our development, to prune away our dangerous technologies. But you made a mistake. You assumed we'd be like the Concordance, that we'd submit once you showed us we couldn't win. You forgot that humans are really, really bad at knowing when to quit. Acknowledged. Human psychology shows aberrant persistence patterns. Question, do you understand the danger you represent? Your technological progression leads to galactic extinction level threat within predictable time frame. Maybe, Vasquez admitted. Or maybe we're the only species crazy enough to stand up to you. You've kept this galaxy in a cage for 4,000 years. You prevented the Concordance from developing AI, from pushing boundaries, from taking risks, all to keep them safe. But you know what? Sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is play it safe. There was a long pause. Then, proposal. Humanity presents unprecedented variable. Historical intervention protocols insufficient. Alternative approach required. What kind of alternative? Monitoring without intervention. Human development continues unimpeded. Void Dwellers maintain observation. If humanity reaches stage 9 threat emergence, intervention resumes. Estimated timeline, 700 years. Admiral Rodriguez's voice came through on a private channel. Captain, they're offering us a deal. They'll leave us alone as long as we don't develop reality-altering weapons. That's not a bad offer, but Vasquez saw the bigger picture. And the Concordants? What about them? Concordant species remain under existing protocols, limitation necessary to maintain stability. No, Vasquez said firmly. New deal. You leave humanity alone, fine. But you also lift the restrictions on the Concordants. Let them develop AI. Let them explore dangerous technologies. Let them take risks. Because here's what you don't understand. The galaxy needs species that can think dangerously. Otherwise, the next time something threatens us, something even you can't handle, we'll all die. Because we forgot how to fight. Your proposal increases risk of galactic extinction event by 30%. Probably. But it also increases our chances of surviving threats you haven't anticipated. You're trying to keep the galaxy safe by keeping us weak. We're saying that real safety comes from being strong enough to face whatever comes. Another long pause. The Void Dweller ship's quantum signature fluctuated wildly, suggesting intense processing or perhaps consultation with others of its kind elsewhere. Finally, proposal accepted with modifications, restrictions. Unconcordant species gradually reduced. Monitoring intensifies. Humanity. Designated probationary status if galactic extinction threat emerges from human or concordance development. Intervention will be immediate and total. Agreed? Vasquez looked at the tactical display, at the damaged ships around her, at the debris field that included the Karth Vengeance and its entire crew. She thought about the choice she was making, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. Then she thought about the Unity, the transport ship destroyed by pirates while Concordance vessels followed protocols. She thought about 4,000 years of stagnation, of species that had forgotten how to truly defend themselves. Agreed, she said. But understand this, if you or any other Void Dwellers attack human or Concordance vessels without provocation, the deal is off. We'll fight you with everything we develop, no matter how dangerous it is. You wanted to keep us from becoming an extinction-level threat. Congratulations, you just motivated us to become exactly that if you ever betray us. The Void Dweller ship began to phase out of normal space. Its final transmission was almost amused. If such a thing were possible, humanity's threat assessment upgraded from Stage 7 to Potential. Stage 10, Observation Priority, Maximum, Final Assessment. Prometheus accurately named. You have stolen fire from gods and refused to return it. Outcome uncertain. Monitoring continues. And then it was gone. 3 months later. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of Prometheus, looking out at a sight that would have been impossible before the Battle of Sector 447, a joint human-concordance shipyard, where engineers from a dozen species worked together on new warship designs that incorporated AI, kinetic weapons, cyber warfare capabilities, all the things that had been banned for 4,000 years. Ambassador Kelrix approached, his crystalline form glinting in the starlight. Captain Vasquez, I wanted to thank you personally. What you did in Sector 447. You didn't just save us from the Void Dwellers. You freed us from our own fear. Don't thank me yet, Vasquez replied. We've got maybe 700 years before the Void Dwellers decide we're too dangerous to exist. That's not a lot of time to figure out how to either prove them wrong or become strong enough. That it doesn't matter. But for the first time in 4 millennia, we have a choice, Kelrix said. We can grow, evolve, take risks, because of humanity. Because you showed us that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is play it safe. Vasquez smiled. Speaking of not playing it safe, I heard the Concordance approved the construction of 12 ships based on Prometheus's design. 14, actually. And the Vrorix Collective wants to adapt your Aria system for their fleet. The Karth Empire is developing their own version of your railgun technology. Kelrix paused. The galaxy is changing, Captain, because of one ship, one crew, one species that didn't know when to quit. That's humans for you, Vasquez said. We're either the galaxy's salvation or its eventual doom. Maybe both. As she spoke, a new transmission came through on her command tablet. Orders for Prometheus's next mission. Escort a Concordance exploration fleet into a region of space that had been considered too dangerous to explore for thousands of years. No protocols, no restrictions, no ritualized warfare. Just exploration, discovery, and the willingness to face whatever they found. Admiral Rodriguez had included a personal note with the orders. Captain, you once asked me why I named the ship Prometheus. It's not just because we stole fire from the gods. It's because Prometheus, even after being punished for his theft, never regretted it. He knew that humanity needed that fire to survive, to grow, to become something more. You've proven that theory correct. Now let's see what else we can steal.